Okay, we are live with Staggerson Jagz
Hello.
and Cat Brony. Uh,
Hello, I'll try not to ruin the stream.
Thanks for joining us on this impromptu live stream, if I can get the words out. And I've got so excuse me. As the title suggests, it's an impromptu live stream where you guys and the people watching at home can ask me about my time at Bible college.
All right.
I guess you can go first.
Yeah, I have plenty of questions, I'm sure. First of all, tell us what Bible college is.
Oh, right. So Bible college, as you guys know, college is what we would call university in the UK, and I think I think Bible college is an American idea. It started up in America, and
it's certain of that. Yeah,
that sounds something American.
And,
that sounds something like what we would do. But you know what? Since there aren't any Canadians here, we'll just blame the Canadians. They won't mind. They're too nice.
Yeah.
I don't think we can get away with that this time, Cap. I think that the responsibility for that lands squarely on the Americans. We have to take the responsibility for that in this conversation.
Yeah.
We're the only representatives of the greatest country on God's green earth.
Yeah. No, it's not God's green earth. Don't you read your stories? It's Xenu's Earth, isn't it? Isn't Xenu the one who's supposed to be behind all of it?
What's his name? Sean Hannity. That's Sean Hannity's call off on his radio show, his sign off.
What?
It's great. He'll say some sentence and it will always end with "on this greatest country on God's green earth," or "in this greatest country," or "for this greatest country on God's green earth."
Yeah, you're seeing how much I pay attention to political talk radio.
I spent years getting brainwashed by that stuff. Sorry, we're getting off topic.
I did too, but yeah, sorry. Mine was more rush than that, so yeah.
Okay. So
not just as bad.
Bible college is where you go to study the Bible, basically, in a nutshell. But the Bible college I went to, I think they've changed it. It was Mattersey Hall Bible College when I was there, but I think recently they've changed it to Mattersey Hall Theological College.
Oh, that's a better name.
Yeah, to give it more credence, I guess. I don't know, but
worked on me. As soon as you said that, I was like, "Hey, that's more credible."
It does sound more credible, doesn't it? But you actually do a degree in biblical theology, and the Bible college I went to, Mattersey Hall, is affiliated with the University of Wales. And so they're the ones who actually, your papers get sent to, and they're the ones who accredit your degree, and you get your degree from the University of Wales. And so you spend 3 years there, studying the Bible in depth and learning Greek and Hebrew and a bit of Latin, and it's quite intense.
So
I have to assume then that this is sort of a specific church-run thing. Like this is run by a certain church or denomination. Is it a Catholic?
Well, no, I was part of the denomination Assemblies of God, which is a Pentecostal denomination. I think Godless Iowan was part of that denomination as well. I seem to remember him saying.
Careful, Black Sofa. You mentioned his name 2 more times, he'll show up.
Yeah. So I do want to. This is sort of a question, and maybe it's a presumption that it's not where they're going to teach you Greek and Latin and Hebrew and the history of the book. They're going to teach you the Bible the way that they want you to understand the Bible, right? Like it's a guided thing.
Yeah, that is what I thought going in. I thought I won't have a problem here. It's the Assemblies of God Bible College. What can go wrong? You know, they're just going to
last words.
They're just going to teach. They're just going to confirm my Pentecostal bias. Basically, that's what I thought. But actually, we got taught some pretty liberal stuff.
Okay. I do have a question. Just for clarification on the Bible College, is it kind of like what we have and what we call seminary here, where you go to become a preacher?
Yeah, it's kind of like
okay.
That.
Okay.
That is what I guess the Anglican Church here in the UK have seminaries. The independent, kind of Pentecostal, churches have Bible colleges, I guess. And
here in Utah, there is a seminary, an LDS seminary across the street from every junior high and every high school, and the students that are in the church get release time from school. The seminary is not on school property; it's across the street.
Okay.
And they get a period of time on their school schedule called release time, where they get released from high school for one period a day to go take seminary.
Wow. Because Utah is the state of Mormonism, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's where.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's the polygamy capital of the world. I mean, the Mormon capital of the world. Sorry, I got my terms mixed up.
See, in the 90s, one of my favorite bands was Utah Saints. And I never understood why they were called Utah Saints until I found out that the Mormons are also known as the Latter-day Saints. And so penny dropped, as it were. So I understood then. I understood the joke. But
did you learn things in Bible college that led you on your path to atheism?
At the time, not at the time, no. But I think what I learnt kind of, formed questions in my mind that I kind of, at the time, kind of swept under the carpet and, pushed at the back of my mind. Because we learned things like, John's gospel is not historical. It's not to be taken historical. It's just a theological gospel, a spiritual gospel. It's not supposed to be taken literally. Genesis is not supposed to be taken literally. Isaiah was written by 2 or maybe even 3 different writers.
See, that's where they're getting you with this crackhead fast talk when they start telling you stuff like Genesis isn't to be taken literally, and you just go, "Oh, okay, yeah, all right," and you write that down in your note. But don't take Genesis literally. But you don't ever actually think about that, because if you go back and you go, "Hang on, if I don't take Genesis literally, then none of this is meaningful at all."
Unless if you do it how I know I did it, and I know a lot of other people do it, as it's allegory to tell the morals of the story of how God actually did, how God is in charge of everything and things along those lines. But even then, the allegoricals just completely screw up. But just be careful, Stags. Don't let Hammy Boy hear you talking like that about Genesis isn't literal.
I would love if Ken Ham gave me some attention.
I mean, people wear blocked by Ken Ham like a sort of badge of honor, don't they?
Yes.
But I've never been blocked by Ken Ham. But then
I think I finally earned my block by Ken Ham. I can't get blocked by Ray Comfort, and I've been so obnoxious and rude to Ray Comfort trying to get blocked by him. Like I took a cue from internet comment etiquette, and for like 3 weeks, every day I would send a nasty tweet to Ray Comfort. Just can I get a mustache ride? Shit like that.
The only one that I haven't been blocked. I haven't been blocked by Ray Comfort, but I haven't really tried to get blocked by him. I'm blocked by the Creation Museum, the Ark Encounter, and Ken Ham himself on Twitter.
You got the trifecta.
Oh. I don't have all four. AIG has not blocked me yet.
Oh,
I'm still trying to get blocked by them. Although I think that might be partly why I got a shadow ban originally, because I would go on there and I would tell them how wrong they are. That's kind of partly what inspired AIG Thursday to get blocked by everyone. They're like, screw it, I'll just have fun myself. I'll take a part of my channel.
You know what? It's fun to wear the blocks as a badge of honor.
Oh,
and
yeah,
stuff.
It is.
I've stopped pursuing blockages because I've found things like being blocked by Dean Esme is not worked out in my favor. It's stopped me from being able to engage in conversations sometimes because I'm blocked by him.
I wasn't trying to get blocked, honestly. I just would look at their tweets, like with the Ark Encounter. I would point out clearly where they were wrong, and since I have drafting experience, I can do that. I asked them, I said, please show me where they use modern iron brackets and rivets in Noah's time.
Yeah.
It's can you show me where they had pre-treated lumber in Noah's time? I mean, it's just simple questions. If it's supposed to be biblically accurate, he must have some evidence for it. So
you mentioned a minute ago that questions, you'd come up with questions would get raised in your studies, but you just sort of swept them away. Was there a large feeling of you were looking at the emperor's dong and you were supposed to tell everybody how fantastic his new clothes were?
Something like that, I think. And also learning about church history and how Christian doctrine developed and evolved over the years. And I think that planted seeds of doubt into my mind as well, and also learning to read. We got taught how to read the Bible critically and objectively, and because I had read the Bible several times before going to Bible college. I had read it all, but I'd always read it through the lenses of my Christian doctrine.
Yeah.
And I think that's what many Christians do.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of our fellow atheists accuse Christians of never reading the Bible, but they have. The problem is they read it through the lenses of their Christian doctrine.
I will have to disagree a little bit there. I think most Christians haven't read it cover to cover.
I don't think most atheists have read it cover to cover either.
Most atheists haven't either. So I think that's there. And a lot of the Christians that I know, especially my parents, I know, they haven't read it cover to cover, and they just go off of what's preached behind the pulpit, and that's what they do. And so, and that's why I'm always, that's what made me an atheist, was reading the Bible. I was studying it to go to seminary, and from there I read it, and I'm like, yeah, there's no way how is the mass murder of these people allegory for something good? There's no, because the only thing I could come up with was follow or die. And I'm like, that ain't someone who you should follow. And just from there, it just got to the point where it's like, no.
If you're gonna compare how many atheists have read the Bible and how much of the Bible to how many Christians have read the Bible and how much of the Bible, you're gonna have to set out some guidelines of what you're actually comparing.
Yeah,
are you talking about atheist activists like us who are out there proselytizing against religion?
Yeah.
Or are you just talking about all atheists in general? Are you talking about Christian fundamentalists? You know what I mean?
I would say
if you go the extreme groups of each, I'd say it's probably about equal. But if you go the whole groups of each, I'll bet you get a higher percentage of the Bible read by atheists than by Christians.
Yeah, but I would still say there's probably I would say it still, if you did the whole percentage of atheists, whole percentage of Christians, like percentage wise, I would say it's, I would say even in that, it might even be equal as well. If you go with the activist part, then I would say probably more atheist activists have read it than Christian activists, and I'm including the ones that go around door to door knocking on the door and that.
So absolutely, because especially like these Mormon kids that are doing missions, and Catholics and stuff, they're basically instructed like, you know, you've got this book, but you don't need to like read it. You know what I mean? Like, we'll tell you what it says.
Yeah, very, very much. And it's, you know, and that's, you know, and they follow a script. And that's why if you ever really want to talk to them half the time, you got to get them off that script.
And so to bring this right back to the topic, it sounds to me like this Bible college was actually taking the study of the Bible rather seriously in an academic kind of a way. Sounds like when you got there, you were sort of greeted with this, like, we're going to actually read this and we're going to, you know, because it sounds like they understand that there's different interpretations, there's different ways of looking at it. So it sounds like they really wanted to study it and find the truth behind it rather than push a line. But I'm just guessing.
Yeah, it was like that. But most of the people I went to Bible college with, they would shut their ears to what they were, you know, to what they heard in lectures, because I visited, you know, a few of their churches since where they're either assistant pastors or pastors, and they're still preaching the same old bullshit. Yeah. And I think, did we go to the same lessons? Did we go to the same Bible college? Did we hear this, you know, the same lectures? I don't, you know.
Well, there's a very strong mechanism at work here, I think. And as I'm giving the Bible college credit for taking it seriously in an academic way, I also think that the cognitive dissonance that is almost necessary to carry on a lifestyle of preaching that sort of thing, that kicks right in. And now the fact that they've approached the Bible in such an academic way just bolsters their own confidence in being able to interpret it themselves. But they can still, even then, they can still separate reality from fantasy in their mind and still go on preaching things about the Bible that their solid knowledge of the Bible should let them know is probably inaccurate. But rather than making that connection, they just think they've got solid knowledge of the Bible, and that makes them more confident in preaching what they want to preach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I just wanted to give a shout out to an atheistic snail who's joining us, and she's been very encouraging to me personally. And if you haven't done so yet, go and subscribe to her YouTube channel, because she's very knowledgeable, and she really knows her stuff. So,
I just realized I'm not following her. I don't have the tweet that she said she was going to send. I don't know if it's on her. She just tweeted out in general. Yeah, I don't have the tweet because she said she had a study and was going to tweet it to me. I don't have it.
Okay.
Because she said there was a study that non-believers know the Bible better than.
Yeah, and I think the point you were trying to get at, which I agree, if this is accurate, what you're trying to say is that a lot of atheists tend to not give Christians credit for reading the Bible at all. No. And that's just not the case. I know plenty of Christians that can cite Bible verses right off the top of their heads.
They read it, but I think the point I was trying to make is they tend to read it. Well, when most Christians approach the Bible, they approach it from the standpoint of faith. Already believing in God, already believing that the Bible is the inspired, infallible word of God, and so they can't read it objectively.
Right. Anything they read has to fit into that.
Here we go. I have it now, so I will post that in the private chat, and then you can post it, Black Sofa.
Okay.
And I was incredibly guilty of that when I was a believer. I would read things in the Bible, and my skeptical, mind, as inactive as it was back then, was still at play in certain areas, but cognitive dissonance would kick in, and I would have to make apologetics up for why this didn't make sense, or what it could possibly mean, or how I could, change it to fit with what I knew to be true about reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what happened to me was towards the end of 2013. I mean, I've lived with depression on and off for most of my adult life.
Yeah.
But I was hit really hard by it. And towards the end of 2013, to the point that I was suicidal. And that it hit me like a ton of bricks. Because I always believe that God will never test you beyond what you can bear.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm being tested beyond what I can bear here.
But didn't Job think the same? Didn't Job say the same thing?
Yeah.
Your faith wasn't strong enough, Black Sofa. I mean, you doubted God.
You got to hold the story of Job in your heart. That's the most important story in the Bible. You went to Bible college. You should know that.
Yeah, that was my go-to book if I ever felt like I was quote unquote being tested beyond what I could handle. It was like, okay, well, Job handled all this shit. Well,
and that's exactly what that's the only thing that story is there for, is for when you go to your priest and you go, this doesn't make any sense. Why is all this shit happening to me? And he goes, remember Job.
Yeah,
remember the faith of Job.
But that was God's fault. Yeah, he allows Satan to do that shit.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. If Satan was banished and was the bad guy, why the hell are they buddy in Job? That makes no sense.
To me, that I was always able to get that to make sense pretty well in my mind without doing too hard of gymnastics. And I was a big subscriber to the idea that we don't understand everything about God.
Yeah,
we don't understand all his motivations and what's actually good for the future and stuff like that. So whatever God's got going, and the angels were here first, and Lucifer was the highest angel.
Yeah, he was basically right under Jesus.
Their buddies. The only reason he was able to act so rebellious is because he was so close to God, and he knew that God wouldn't just destroy him; he'd give him his own apartment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's but yeah, like with that was always kind of how I did it. Was like, oh well, I'm just not understanding the method of God. God works in mysterious ways, and that was kind of how I justified it. But looking
the real explanation is that
I don't think it made sense.
The real explanation is that there were religions around before these religions were come up with, and some of the ideas and tropes from those old religions carried over. Like if you think of the Greek pantheon, the gods were always bickering with one another. There was always someone coming up to Zeus and pulling on his skirt.
And the idea of Satan and the devil, as we know it today, came around from the Zoroastrians, I believe.
Yeah, that's what Hebrew came straight out of. Was Zoroaster.
Yeah, and there was maybe it wasn't Zoroaster. There was another one that was around the time of the Jews, where if you look at what Lucifer is, they reference it in, I think, I want to say Isaiah, where he talks about the sons of another god or something like that are. Where they were at war, and that's when Lucifer is mentioned the first time as the light bringer, as the light bearer.
Well, that's what Lucifer is. That's what Lucifer means.
Yeah.
Lucifer really just means Venus.
Yeah, and that was what they were referencing And from there, it kind of devolved into, because Onra did a really good breakdown of this, where he talks on it, and it's about how it was El Satan, and it got basically butchered to El Satan.
Yeah.
And, well, yeah, language evolves. That's acceptable.
And from there, well, the meanings change with the wording. It's like the Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. Yeah. And then there was another one that was close to it where the Jews purposely butchered it to be Lord of Flies, but it was actually Lord on High. I don't remember. Aaron Ra, like I said, he did a phenomenal breakdown of it. So yeah, that was I learned a lot on that one.
And
here's a fun little thought. One of my beliefs that I had when I was into all this shit was that Lucifer was what the highest archangel was called. God's highest hand, basically his right hand man was Lucifer, and that's represented by the Venus in the sky. They would have called it a star. It's not a star.
Yeah.
But from the point of view of the ground, when you're looking up the sky talking about these things, you can call it a star in that context. And it's the first star you see in the morning for half the year, and it's the last star you see at night for the other half of the year. And it's the light bringer. And that's what Lucifer means, is the bringer of light. And so the title Lucifer was taken away from that particular angel when he was cast into the pit, and then the title Lucifer was given to Jesus. And this ties right into Mormon doctrine, by the way, because Lucifer and Satan and Jesus are brothers. So that's why Jesus calls himself the bright and morning star, because he is now Lucifer.
And Revelation.
And from there also, that's partly why back when the church was forming, the Luciferians, where they did, if I remember correctly, they classified Jesus as Lucifer because he was the light. He was the bringer of light to the world. And the church didn't like that because Satan was supposed to be Lucifer. Lucifer was cast from heaven. And so they got basically labeled as heretics and were killed off pretty much by the church.
Because people misunderstood what they were trying to say. So they're not saying Jesus and Lucifer are the same person. They're saying Lucifer isn't called Lucifer anymore. Lucifer is now the angel of the pit. The accuser. He got the title Lightbringer taken away and was given the title the accuser.
Another thing that I learned at Bible college, of course, was that if you read the passage about Lucifer in Isaiah in context, Lucifer is actually the king of Babylon. It's not the devil.
No.
It's the king of Babylon who wanted.
There's no devil.
It was like the kid of another god, the Babylonian god, I believe, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I brushed up on this, so I'm a little rusty.
In the Old Testament, they were constantly making space for other gods.
Oh yeah. And the thing is that I always love is, well, why is it that if God is so, if God's the only God, as Christians try to claim the Bible says, why the hell do you need a commandment that says, thou shalt have no other gods before me? He knew that other gods were around and real, but he was jealous and said, no, you worship me, or else I throw a temper tantrum like a 2-year-old.
I could have, and I probably still could. And I may have actually been toying with this idea of making a legitimate Poe channel, not like my Emmett videos. But I'm aware where Matt's going to actually do apologetics, because I'm really good at apologetics, because I can apologize for all the shit you just said too. I can come up with excuses that are biblically sound, that explain away a lot of the problems that atheists have. And so one of my favorite things to do is to point to other atheists when I think that they're making bad arguments, as you discovered last night.
I was not expecting you to be that expert with, because honestly, half the time when I run into Christians, like with Laz, I usually they are that, because that's why I just go in with the straight blunt, here's what I think, here's what I know the Bible to say, because that will knock them off their script half the time, because 90% of the Christians I run into that's why, as you saw later on as it went, I was trying to evolve my argument, because it's like, okay, he's not going to try and run one of those script arguments. You actually knew what the hell you were talking about. So I actually had to think a little more on my feet. Because honestly, 90% of the Christians, if you just knock them off their script just for a second,
yeah,
that's enough to get it to where you want it to go. And then they're forced to now you back them in the corner. And that's usually why I do it that way. But I actually have a Poe channel. I just don't have any content to it. I need some voice changer or something so people don't recognize my voice.
Peter and I gave Cap a little exercise in improving his argumentative skills.
Yeah.
Not that they're horrible or anything, but we noticed something that he might have been able to improve upon in an area. So I played the Christian apologist, and we had a little argument, and it was fucking.
Because yes, it's you gotta, because like I said, most Christians I run into who I end up arguing with 90% of the time, they are not.
Here's the thing,
like that.
With all my apologetics that I came up with, I was always operating under the knowledge that the Bible cannot be infallible. The Bible was written by man. The earth is not fucking 6,000 years old. That's stupid. Whatever it says in Genesis has to be misinterpreted over the thousands of years. And I was always like, I could always excuse it to a misinterpretation, if nothing else.
Yeah. And that's one of the things is because usually the ones I run into, I have the most issue with, are usually the vocal, Bible's infallible. And that's why that argument style that I have is usually my go-to, because it usually works fairly well on them.
But there's a million different points of view on what the Bible says and what it means.
Until you ask them, what do you mean by the Bible when you say that the Bible is inspired by God? What exactly do you mean by that?
Usually, that's why I will try to work off of what someone says and then try and argue that point into how I understand it, and try and knock them off. Because if I can get them knocked off their script, it works for me.
But see, I didn't have a script. That was the problem. Ran into somebody that knew where they were going. And once you let me talk, once you let me express my side, remember, it was only then that we came to a point where I didn't have an answer all of a sudden, because it led me right into the wall you were trying to lead me into. But I just you had to let me take it there, because the path you were trying to take me down wasn't what I
and that's actually. And I know I still have a lot to improve on my arguments. That's why I like doing response videos, because it's easier. But we do have a question in the chat from an atheistic snail.
I think I do want to say, I do believe there are much more than 1 million Christians on the planet, an atheistic snail. I wonder if there's 1 billion Christians on the planet.
Yeah. Well, no, there's only so many million Christians, varying on which denomination you are. Because remember, all other denominations are wrong, and you're heresy and going to hell for it.
Well, no. If we're talking in a cladistic way, and we're just talking catch-all Christians, that includes Mormons, that includes Catholics, that includes Protestants, that includes.
I was being the smart ass.
But she did have a question. She did have a good question in the chat. Open.
What she's asking, what was my Bible college's stance on creationism? And their stance was that it was old Earth creationism. In other words, God created the universe, but he guided the evolutionary process, if you like. And it's quite interesting because a creationist writer actually sent some of his books to our college. The principal said, okay, we've been sent these books, but you can read them if you like, but you have to know that we don't agree with this person's stance. We don't agree with New Earth creationism. And so just take that into account when you read, when you read his books, and they're not peer reviewed or anything like that. He's just writing, on his own accord, and we don't. So yeah, it was very much old Earth creationism. God created the universe, but it's okay to admit that we don't know exactly how he did it. I think that's the stance that they kind of took.
That's a solid stance. It makes so much more sense than young Earth creationism, because you've taken, if I'm a creationist and I'm going into an argument against an atheist, if I choose the stance of old Earth creationism as opposed to young Earth creationism, I have taken away so many of the atheist tools to fight you with. Because one, I'm acknowledging the fallibility of the Bible. Two, I'm acknowledging mistranslations. I'm acknowledging that it was written by man. I'm acknowledging that a lot of it's allegory. A lot of things come along with that package for me anyway. I mean, there's more to it than just saying it's an old Earth, but with that, I feel like in that package is all those things I just mentioned and more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it just makes it make so much more sense. And all you're doing is sliding towards deism, because the less literally you take the Bible, the less you're talking about Yahweh.
Exactly. And that's why, as when I was a Christian in that, I mean, the whole Noah's flood thing, what made it, the way I always justified it is I never believed it was a worldwide flood. I always understood it as, well, to them, what was the world?
Yeah.
It was everything they could see around them. They didn't know about freaking America. They didn't know about China or Asia.
Yeah.
All they knew was that little plot of land. And guess what? We know that local floods happen. Hell, there's so many myths and legends from that one flood of where it derived from.
There's an area there called the Iraqi floodplain.
And it's called the flood, to quote on Raw, it's called the floodplain for a reason.
Yeah, and if it flooded, and we're going back to the very dawn of civilization here. So actually, unironically, we are touching on some of the truth in Genesis, okay? Because we are going back to the beginning of what we consider modern humans, societal modern humans, or whatever. Fuck, I just had a brain fart. Yeah, so the Sumeria, that area, that was the very first where farming and cities started. That was the first place for humans. That was the Garden of Eden, if you will, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers met. They nailed it. That's exactly what they got right. And farming was so important, and agriculture and having the animals, breeding the animals, the farm animals and stuff. So when it flooded, that would have been just a disaster. More than just the people that killed, how many people died the next year from starvation. Yeah. And so these stories that do go back way before the Epic of Gilgamesh, a couple iterations even before that, can logically be said to go back to the beginning of civilization itself. Yeah. And it's one of the most important things. When this place floods, save the fucking animals.
Yeah, very much. And like that's why the Epic of Gilgamesh is to an extent based on, and there's other legends of a flood from that same region, and they're all probably based on a single flood somewhere back in the day where it was like I like to think about around here. You have the Great Flood of '92. Where I live, I mean, there's still marks on telephone poles where you can see where the water was. And it's always fun to think about, if we didn't live in a modern civilization 50 years from now, how much of a legend would that flood actually be? And how much would it have, grown? Because that was when Tuttle Creek overflowed here, although a lot of other rivers were flooded as well. It was a really bad one.
Atheistic Snail made a comment that was right in line with the next question I was going to ask. and that was that if they taught you any of this sort of stuff in Bible college, that, like, for example, that the story of the flood predates any such thing as a Jew. You know what I mean? Like, way predates the stories of the Bible by many, many millennia. Did they teach you those things?
I think I didn't take the module entitled I can't remember what it was called. I think it was something like Old Testament Survey or but I didn't take that module for some reason. But they may have taught that in that module, but I didn't take that one, so I don't. So
I'm asking a biologist about chemistry, and they just they didn't take that class. I got it. No worries.
Right.
So was there anything that you'd consider a parallel to that sort of thing? I mean, was there any like really big eye-opening things that they really shone light on that you wouldn't have expected them to, that could very well be taken as evidence against the veracity of the Bible, if you understand my question?
Well, yeah, learning about the historical Jesus and all the oh no, I've had a brain fart. Excuse me, and all, all the academia that went into the historical Jesus, learning about the historical Jesus and trying to pinpoint who the historical Jesus was, over and how that developed over the years, and learning that the Jesus of history was not necessarily the same as the Christ of faith. I think that planted seeds of doubt in my mind as well.
Yeah.
Well, once you start asking questions, like, I did a really good job of coming up with apologetics, but I didn't have any organization to lean on. I was actually had ideas of starting my own church when I was younger, because I had such what I considered my own take on it all.
Yeah.
And but after a while, the questions become too much, and I don't care if you don't even know what Occam's razor is. If you've, I don't want to be, I don't know, if you've got at least average intelligence, I feel like you'll come up with the right kind of questions, and eventually, if you don't figure out a way to stop asking the questions, you're going to realize that they don't have good answers. Occam's razor is going to set in, and you're going to go, how do I know? If this isn't true, and this is allegory, and this may or may not have happened, and this story directly contradicts this story.
Yeah.
How do I know? How do I know which ones are true? How do I pick the shit from the good stuff?
Yeah. Atheistic Snail had a good question too. So were you taught Moses as a mythic figure or accurate story?
Yeah, we were taught that there was a historical person called Jesus, who was an apostolic preacher, rabbi, if you like, who was very charismatic, who had many followers,
received baptism from John, right?
Yeah, and who genuinely believed that he was the Messiah, and his followers genuinely believed that he was the Messiah, and that his king, at some stage he was going to usher in the kingdom of God, and then when he was crucified, it was, maybe he's not the Messiah after all. Maybe, it all went pear-shaped. So they had to come up with some mythicism to explain why, how the Messiah ended up nailed to a cross. And
it was story, Moses, not Jesus.
Oh, Moses.
That's right. Yeah, well, I'm kind of actually interested in what
that's
you're saying,
interesting
though,
still.
so I was going to let him continue this line of thought.
Yeah, sorry, that was interesting.
I even had a couple more questions on this, and I was going to keep the Moses thing in
sorry.
mind.
If you want to continue on, that was an interesting story. Don't get me wrong, that was really interesting.
Now's a really good spot for me to ask. I mean, obviously, they taught there was. I mean, I'll use the word magic because I find it entertaining, but they that Jesus did in fact come back and show himself to the apostles and walk through a wall and that sort of thing.
We I think when the module that where I was, where we were taught all of this was called the New Testament and Christian Origins, and we got taught how to compare the Gospels and read them critically and look into the history of how the historical Jesus doctrine developed over the years, and I think we were encouraged to think for ourselves.
I see.
Did Jesus literally rise from the dead? Is he literally returning? Or is that hyperbole? And we got taught to there were different interpretations of the rapture and the end times and all the rest of it.
I like Snail's most recent comment. She said, "No wonder there are so many priests in the clergy project actually studying the Bible and biblical history." Yep. As I've said, the greatest way to become an atheist is to read the Bible.
Yeah. Read it critically.
Yeah. She said it's either going to cement things or place some profound doubts.
Yeah.
That's exactly what reading the Bible does.
So what about Moses? Did they teach you anything about Moses?
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember learning that the first 5 books of the Bible weren't necessarily written by Moses, and because one thing that I learned that stuck with me is that there's definitely a part in Deuteronomy they definitely wasn't there for, because it talks about Moses's body being taken away and buried somewhere that we don't know of. So, and then there's a couple of chapters after Moses died, so he obviously didn't write those chapters, and,
right.
So I think we pretty much got taught that the first 5 books of the Bible weren't, they were written by different authors, because if you compare them and contrast them, you can see that even Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are written by different, or Genesis 1 is written by the Elohim, priestly, people.
Yeah, they use different words for God.
Yeah, and
from one chapter to the other
is where the Yahwehists come in and start writing. But all of a sudden, Elohim becomes Yahweh. He's got a name now.
Yeah, God has so many different names. As like you got El, Abba, Yahweh, and that was actually 3 completely different gods, and then it just became El. Then it went from El to El Abba Yahweh. Then it went to Yahweh, I believe, is how the progression went. I could be wrong on that.
But it sounds like they were just teaching you. I mean, they were teaching you a lot of the truth. Like they were enough of the truth that you weren't going to call bullshit, because it's pretty easy to like look at the objective data and see that yes, there's no way that Moses wrote the fucking Torah. Because Moses didn't exist, but they're not going to tell you that much. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't. Yeah. Because if Moses didn't exist, then what? And what the fuck is Jesus talking about half the time?
Yeah, I have to point out one thing that atheist Six Snail said about I got to do it in a certain voice. Catholic and Anglican blasphemy! Of course the patriarchs wrote the Pentateuch. So you got to do it in that preachy voice. Whenever you're going to do that, you got to do the preachy voice.
Yeah.
When I read it, I actually thought of Life of Brian, when the head rabbi guy at the stoning goes, blasphemy, blasphemer. That's what it made me think of.
Yeah,
that's a great movie.
And while I was at Bible college, I actually, as some of my own personal studies, I tried to look into the historicity of Abraham, and I couldn't find any evidence whatsoever that a person called Abraham even existed. There doesn't seem to be any archaeological evidence for Abraham. He seems to be a mythical character. I mean, there may have been someone called Abraham, but myths and legends have grown up around this.
Yeah, and I actually, like I said, I know back when I was a Christian, I had a lot of what most people, because I was Southern Baptist, what most people considered heretical views. Like, I was an annihilationist when I was and if you know anything on Southern Baptist, that's heresy right there. I never believed that like the patriarchs exist because I could never find evidence for it. Because I wanted to be a minister for almost as long as I can remember. I thought that was the best way to help people. And yeah, so I had from there, it was all that. And it was, I like Abraham, I never thought existed. I thought it was just, well, you had a guy and the name probably got lost over the years and Abraham just kind of stuck from there. Yeah. So, yeah. That's heretical in and of itself as a Southern Baptist. So I was a heretic even when I was a Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, any kind of a thinking person is going to come up with some heretical views if they read the Bible and understand reality and listen to sources outside the Bible and shit, because, shit just didn't happen. Just didn't fucking happen.
No.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
The only figures in the Bible that there's evidence of are like the kings and stuff that they mention.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even that's very tenuous.
Yeah. Yeah, like it was. I'm still not even sure on this. I haven't looked into it, but I believe we finally been able to confirm that King David did exist. Like they found some. I thought they found some art. Now I'm not sure. I haven't really looked much into it. I got in an argument with someone, and they gave me a link. I've yet to look at it. And that was a couple weeks ago. I know I'm bad. But I'll have to go try and find it again. And because they're like, yeah, they found this. And it wasn't from like a Christian site. It was actually from an actual more reputable site. I mean, it wasn't like an archaeology journal or something, but it was from I think it might even been in Nat Geo that they sent a link from. Or not Nat Geo, but one of those type of journals, those type of magazines. So it's not religious biased per se, so I'll have to look into that myself, but I think they found something of him.
Oh yeah. I think David did exist, but he certainly wasn't the
how he was portrayed in the Bible. No,
he wasn't the messianic king that he's portrayed as in the Bible.
And that whole story is so poorly written and so unbelievable. And it falls into many of the same pitfalls that different stories in the Bible do, where, for example, people making mistakes, like, or not recognizing one another when they should. David was the king's guy. He like played music for him in his bedroom and shit like that. Yeah. And then when they were out on the battlefield, the king didn't recognize David. He didn't know who he was.
Yeah. Well,
that's why would they let this poor dumb little boy go out and fight Goliath.
Yeah.
With the whole battle hinging. I mean, whether they were losing or not, they're not going to fucking agree to that. That doesn't make sense. And then let him go out there without weapons or armor.
I can clarify why. Well, first off, they did try to give him armor, but it wouldn't fit. But I can explain why the king didn't recognize him.
Yeah, of course. If he couldn't fit in the normal warrior's armor, exactly my point. No, little boy, you're not going out there to fight.
But here's the thing. I can explain why the king didn't recognize him. See, when he was out on the battlefield, he had clothes on. You mentioned he played music in the bedroom. He was the original Catholic priest. I'm sorry. I'm so going to hell for that joke.
The one thing that is believable about that, which I always had a lot of skepticism about when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I always thought, oh, come on. He killed him with a rock, with a sling. Oh, come on. Now I'm an adult and I own a few slings and I'm fully aware of what they're capable of. And you fucking cave somebody's goddamn skull in with one of those things.
And it didn't surprise me because the sling was a actual battlefield weapon. That was one you would use. Because it could, as you said, it could cave someone's head in. But the thing that I always understood, I knew Goliath wasn't 9 feet tall. I knew that wasn't possible.
The original Hebrew has him like 6.5 feet tall or something.
Okay,
like that.
I'm not from. It's been a while since I studied any of that. Because I'm self-taught in most of it, and most of the research I can find is done by other scholars. But people believe he was like 6'6" or 6'5", something like that, which would make sense. And it's because the 9 is actually because of the way the counting was back then. They didn't have a 10 decimal system like we have.
Oh no!
And so when they were trying to translate it into numbers that we use now, it doesn't always correlate. That's why you get like all the really funky 900 years and stuff like that. It's if you actually break it down with the math, it actually becomes more reasonable.
Well, and I read somewhere that they just straight up changed it. Like in the original Hebrew, it's 4 cubits in a span. And then in the King James, they just added 2 cubits to 6 cubits in a span.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Because maybe by the time the King James was written, 6.5 feet tall wasn't necessarily all that impressive. And they
but back in the day when you were like 5'1", you see a guy 6 foot. I mean, 6'6". Yeah, that's he's gonna like. I know someone who's 6'1". He went to, I think it was England or in the UK somewhere, and he was visiting some of the old castles, and it's like he went to go see like the dungeons where they type people in. Like, you're not gonna be able, you're gonna have to crouch down. Is what the tour guide told me. He goes, it can't be that bad. And he was crouching. He's like, yeah. I mean, I know a guy who he's 6'7", 375, or at least he was in high school, and we always joked he was only 375 because the scales didn't go any higher at the doctor's office, because if he was 400 would not surprise us, but he was all muscle. If he lived back in the day, just send him out with a sword and raise the sword up, and everybody's gonna be crapping themselves because I mean, you're 5'2", you want to take on that thing? and I mean it in the nicest way. Singer was a freak. His name was James Brown, but we nicknamed him Singer because there were like 4 James at our school.
Oh, okay.
But if you knock that dude in the face with a river rock, slung by a sling,
that ain't gonna stop you. That ain't gonna stop you. But most everybody would probably be like everyone else was. We're supposed to fight that? Screw that! I'm out of here.
Anyway, it's been great hanging out with you guys, and I really appreciate you coming along to for this impromptu hangout. And
no problem.
And it's been really interesting. It's been an interesting discussion. It's been good to answer some of your questions.
Yeah.
And so I'm just gonna say goodbye to Cap and Stags and to the people we've got watching as well. And as always, thanks for watching.